Welcome to Prospects to Pros, where we talk about all the guys that are about to get drafted in the NFL, the ones who just got drafted in the NFL, everything in between. We're definitely focused on the guys about to be drafted because we all just got back from the combine. Dane and I were podcasting away. Lance Zierlein was on the field for 4 days of workouts, and we got big stuff going on. And we're going to get to our lesser-known winners of the combine with some insight from Dane and Lance in a second. But first, I feel like we need a siren for this, Dane. You have a new mock draft out. Mock Draft 3.0, and it is it's a banger, especially if you're a Bears fan. If you are a Bears fan, this is your favorite mock draft. It has nothing to do with the players you're selecting because you've traded down twice and amassed a stockpile of future number one picks. But you did that, Dane, because you're projecting quarterback needy teams moving up to make sure they get their guy.
Right. And I mean, coming out of Indianapolis, there's so much information that you hear that, just talking to people, and it's okay. Time to parse all of that and figure out what is fact, what's fiction, what has the most likely, chance of happening. And when you look at these quarterbacks, you look at the teams that are going to be jockeying for position. It just feels like, okay, we take a team like the Colts, where you have a first-year head coach, you have a general manager who he knows if he doesn't get this right, he might never run a draft again. He might never be in this position to be a general manager and be at the head of the room, building the draft board, doing all that, and Chris Ballard. And then you've got an owner who's a complete wild card. And it just feels like, as I was leaving Lucas Oil Stadium on Saturday night, watching that CJ Stroud performance, I came away thinking, you know what, this might be the guy that all three can agree on, that all three look at and say, you know what, he's the accuracy, the ability to come in and compete right away. And just there's so much going for CJ Stroud that I feel like Indianapolis, if they move up to one, now it's going to be expensive. They know that. But this is a team, an organization that's been compromising on the quarterback the last, since Andrew Luck retired. And it's time to stop compromising and go get your guy. Now, who is that guy? We don't know that. But in this mock draft, I went with Stroud at number one. Lance, tell me, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I could totally see it. I went into this combine expecting him to be the most accurate, and he was. Like, for me, nothing changed with CJ Stroud. I'll tell you what was different being on the field is seeing what Will Levis looks like, in person, seeing what Anthony Richardson looks like in person, seeing them stand next to Stroud. And Stroud is not the physical body type that those two guys are. He's not. It's not an impressive. It's more like a standard quarterback, maybe. And then having Bryce Young stand next to, at the time, Levis wasn't there. It was Stroud and Richardson and Bryce Young. And it's like Bryce Young looked like a skater kid. He had his hat on, he had his hoodie on, he had his backpack on. He looked like a skater kid next to them. And I thought, number one, as expected, Bryce came in over 200 and didn't work out. So then when he gets to his pro day, he will not weigh. He'll probably be, somewhere in the 190s, and he will throw and work out. In hindsight, smart move for Bryce Young not to take off the hoodie and put on the shirt and throw next to those guys, because I think it could have hurt him. Just, when you see him next to those guys throwing, you got one guy who's super accurate in Stroud. You got one guy with a great body type and a big arm in Richardson. And then you'd have Young going at the very back end of that after DTR and Clayton Tune. You would have, eventually gotten to Bryce Young, and he would have had to have been either as accurate as CJ Stroud. If he wouldn't have, it would have, I think, hurt his stock. So I think in hindsight, just getting to 200 pounds is a big deal, because now forever he'll be a 200-pound quarterback. He'll be 204 forever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Forever. So in the books, even though he didn't play in the 200s, he'll be a 204-pound quarterback. So we can't go back and say, hey, here's a quarterback that did it who was under 200 pounds. That doesn't exist. He wasn't under 200 pounds. But I think waiting till his pro day and not taking a chance next to a couple of guys with big cannons and Levis. And Levis was humming it now. People aren't talking about Levis much because nobody likes him. He's everyone's least favorite quarterback for some reason. He's just trying to mind his own business, and people go out of their way to like slap him across the face on the way to telling you how great Richardson is. They walk by and just go slap. And by the way, Richardson's so much better than him. Levis, actually, I thought, he did show a gun. He can really drive the ball, and you can feel it down on the field. But Stroud, I thought, got started off a little just average, and then it really picked up. And what I thought was impressive was he was able to match Richardson with deep ball distance, which I thought was just, kind of impressive. So I don't have a problem with Dane putting at number 1 going CJ Stroud. I really don't. I think he's more ready, certainly. To me, it goes Bryce Young, then below that Stroud. And then the other 2 guys are high ceiling, low floor guys. So if you're going to talk about getting a guy that you want to be game ready, you got 2 guys potentially who are those guys, even though nobody's really game ready as a rookie. And then one of them happens to be bigger than the other one and actually more accurate than the other one. So if you bet on Bryce Young, part of it is you're betting on intangibles and focus and poise and consistency. If you want accuracy in the body type, then Stroud's going to probably be your guy. And to Dane's point, I said this on Twitter. I truly don't know how these players are going to stack up on people's boards. I don't know. There's a lot of teams that might like Levis a lot. I think Daniel Jeremiah told me he had talked to teams that had Bryce Young 3rd, some who had had him 2nd. I think these team boards are going to be greatly fluctuating from team to team what quarterbacks look like. Especially
with Anthony Richardson in these interviews. I got mixed reviews from teams on how his interviews went. Like some said, he did pretty well. Others said there's a lot he just doesn't know. Like he just has so like they were really not surprised because it's expected. He's a redshirt sophomore, 13 career starts, under 400 career pass attempts. It wasn't a surprise, but I think it was a little more eye opening just how the gap that he has to go for him to be where teams want him to go out there and start a game tomorrow. It's a big gap.
He can't. He's not ready. And you can see by the way he attacks zones. Teams started figuring out they could zone him up, and he didn't have a great game plan for painting pictures in zones. He doesn't throw at the anticipation. That comes with time. You have to play football. So he came out a year early. I think it would have really benefited him to make his NIL money and stay another year. You're going to be just as athletic. You'll be just as impressive. You just would have learned more football potentially. And I think it would have really helped him. But he's still going to get drafted. His combine helped him. I don't think there's any way around it. But I want to bring this up because you guys both are in the media. I think we'll all appreciate this. I was reading there was – I'm not going to say who, but there was something that came out last year about how impressive Malik Willis was in combine interviews. And then I talked to some teams, and I brought it up. And my question said, I hear Willis was really great. I'm like, he was okay. Not great. Like, none of these guys were great in interviews. And I said, I saw a media report that he was killing it in combine interviews. He said he was okay. There was nothing special. He's got a lot to learn about football, but no, he didn't kill it in interviews. Now, that's one team I talked to who said that. The pro day, everyone got really excited about Malik Willis's pro day. The narrative, and I think it's pushed more from Twitter and frankly the 24-hour shows that are on all the time with sports, where Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, who's going to get first? We all were asking that question. Who's going to get picked first? And then all of a sudden, Malik Willis, there's rumors he could go 2 to the Lions. Oh. He could end up going 2 to the Lions. He went in the 3rd round. And the reason I bring this up is because we finally reached a point where the reality of tape, and by the way, his tape was not good last year. So Malik Willis shouldn't have been drafted in the first off of tape. The reality was the NFL drafted him on tape, and Twitter and social media and the media had narratives that were out of control on him. And so it was like this shocking turn of event when he went 3rd. We had the trick shots by Zach Wilson, and he went 2nd. And then we see trick shots from Malik Willis, the same throw. And it's like, wow, at his pro day, he went 3rd round. Anthony Richardson, huge athletic boost. Now I'm seeing stories about he's killing it in his interviews. Dane just said, he just gave you an opposite angle there where he said, he's still got a lot to learn. So the media starts saying he's killing in interviews. This passes on. You see the highlight reel plays. Now, I don't think we're going to see another Malik Willis 2.0 where the media narrative is so high on him. I'm just telling you the tape is not as good as you think it is from the highlight reels. And I know it's not on Will Levis. Well, neither of these guys did great. And you watched him, Andy. Tell the truth. You watched him. You're a Gator.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's highly inconsistent. There's some great highlight plays that are followed by a bunch of what the hell was that? Right. I mean, the Florida State game is a prime example. I went back and rewatched every throw he made in the Florida State game. He couldn't miss for about a quarter and a half. And then for the last 2.5 quarters, it was just awful. And I think he finished 9 for 27 in that game. Now, there's some drops, sure. But there are also some things you cannot explain. And like, as far as the narrative about the killing it in the combine interviews, I'm always very hesitant to report that. Obviously, I did a story on Anthony Richardson. I met up with his team, him and his team after the performance on Saturday. And I like those guys. They're the same guys who trained Brock Purdy last year. They're really interesting people. They're not, I think they do a good job. But is their job to present the player in the most positive light possible? So, of course, they're going to tell you that they're killing the combine interviews and they're killing the team interviews. But I trust what the teams say about that. And so, like, what Dane said tracks with what I heard too, that everybody likes him. He's a very nice guy. He seems to want to work really hard. And there's a lot that needs to be learned. Now, he's 20. That was Wikipedia's got his age wrong. Here, don't trust Wikipedia. Wikipedia had him at 21 for the whole, season. He's 20 right now. He turns 21 in May, I believe. So he's considerably younger than most of the prospects we're talking about. And that may have something to do with it. He may get a little grace because of that. We'll see. But Lance, I'm with you. The tape thing is hard to ignore. Now, he did put some good things on tape. Like the Malik Willis's last year at Liberty, there was some ugly, ugly, ugly tape.
Yeah.
And Richardson's was inconsistent, but probably not that bad.
Well, and I think that
that's right.
It's tough because a guy like this you want on the field getting reps because that's how he's going to get better. But you can't put him out there right now. And that's where the hang up is with Anthony Richardson is we can't play him right now, but that's how he's going to get better. So, we're just going to sit him. And how much better is he going to get sitting for a year as a rookie? I don't know. It's tough. But again, at the same time, we're not saying that he's going to fall to the third round like Malik Willis. I mean, Lance, you still think he's going top 10, right?
Yeah, I do. My mock draft comes out today, and I've got him going 4th, but to the Colts. I've got him in the same spot you do. I don't think there's any doubt that when you watch him throw, see, for me, I actually saw things I like from Anthony Richardson throwing the ball. Yeah, he sprayed some high. That's who he's going to be. He's going to be Cam Newton. He's going to, and even Josh Allen. They're going to spray some. That's going to happen. But if you're a home run hitter, then hit home runs too. I'm okay with strikeouts. As long as your launch angle's hitting home runs, I'm okay with some strikeouts. That's going to be okay. But I need you to have a few more singles if you're Anthony Richardson. I need you to have a little better plate discipline when it's 3rd down and 8 yards to go. You got to be able to check one down, make an easy throw and move on and punt and move on to the next play and not throw an interception, So I think all that stuff has to happen. But the way he comported himself, the way his demeanor on the field, the way he threw the ball, the way it came out, I actually came away way more impressed. And I'll tell you what happened for me was watching him in person, and it happened with Smith-Njigba too. But watching him in person, I was able to really think about the boom side more than the bust side. For the first time, I've been in the middle, but I was able to kind of start to see him having, like, I could see headlines where he has these big games, and I'm thinking, why was I ever, that concerned? Like, he had special talent. It was a weird thing. I was going through a projection in my mind thinking, I could see him doing special things for the first time.
It's hard when you see someone who is that special of an athlete up close to think about the negative possibilities because there just aren't that many human beings like that. And, Levis is it's funny because if Anthony Richardson weren't in this draft, we'd be saying a lot of the same things about Levis, who is
almost
a very
230 pounds, 229.
They both look like a create a player on Madden. And,
Yep.
and like, I would never wear a shirt if I were either one of them.
No, big hands. Both of them have enormous hands. Both of them have big velocity. Both of them, you're right. Will Levis is 229 and he's chiseled. He looks good. And I think Will Levis is the forgotten quarterback. Like I'm kind of down on Will Levis personally, but I don't think it's fair what's happening to him, if I'm being honest. I think if you're talking about one thing with Anthony Richardson and then you don't have Will Levis in that same conversation, I've made a point of putting Richardson and Levis in the same conversations because to me, they're the same quarterbacks. I mean, they're different types of quarterbacks, but they're in the same tier. High ceilings, but disappointing bust level, floors. So I've got a higher grade on Richardson because I think that his athleticism and ability to run are always going to trump a guy who is a tough runner, but not the same type of explosive runner. We saw with Justin Fields, you can lose a bunch of games, but still pile up stats like Justin did running the football. It's just that eventually you can't win games that way. Like eventually, and you're right, it's so tantalizing to see it. You're right, Andy. You see it and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And then you see Joe Burrow and he's pasty looking. He doesn't have a tan. And then he's just dicing you from the pocket. Bang, 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 bang. None of that has to do with how high he jumped. None of it had to do with how fast he ran. It's all about accuracy. And that's why you start going back to CJ Stroud, frankly.
Which is why Dane's got the Colts trading up to get him at number 1, which makes a lot of sense. Dane, I wanted to ask you've got Will Anderson going 3 to the Cardinals, and then you have Jalen Carter going 5 to the Seahawks. Does that have anything to do with Jalen Carter's legal situation, or is that because you think people will trade up for quarterbacks and the Cardinals need an edge rusher?
It's Jalen Carter's. It's just a tough situation right now. We don't know enough because the teams don't know enough. Once the teams do more digging, because this situation, they already had some concerns just because Jalen Carter's, the maturity, things like that. They weren't worried about anything criminal, but they were worried about the maturity. This situation, which they didn't know was coming, now we have updated evidence of some questionable decision making. So teams need to go back and figure out, okay, what's really going on here. So it's a little up in the air with Jalen Carter at this point, but I still feel like he's too talented to fall too far. And when you look at it, the Cardinals, they're a brand new regime, first year general manager, first year head coach. I don't know that they'd really go for a guy like Jalen Carter when meanwhile you've got Seattle, with Schneider and Pete Carroll, and they're more a little more seasoned. You could see them maybe taking a chance more so than Arizona. I heard from a lot of Arizona fans who were mad that I didn't give them the same deal that I gave the Bears at number 4 because I had the Bears moving from 4 to 9 so the Panthers could move up and take Richardson. I think the Arizona one's out of there badly, according to the fans. So I think that it's interesting with the quarterbacks because I had 4 quarterbacks only in the top 7. I was fascinated to learn that's never happened before. Like I am going through the history and we've never seen 4 quarterbacks go in the top 7 picks. And I was like, wow, like could this quarterback class really make history doing that? But yeah, it's possible. And so
Lance's eye is twitching right now.
It's a quarterback class. It's very flawed, but you can understand the optimism. But I tell you this, and Lance, I'll be fascinated to get your read too. Talking to people in Houston or in Indianapolis, I was interested the amount of people that are not convinced that Houston's going quarterback at number 2. They feel like there is a realistic scenario where Houston's going to continue to build up the roster because they still have 2 first-rounders next year, and so they don't. If the right quarterback, they don't feel like they need pressure to go up to 1. But if the right quarterback's out there at 2, they don't feel like they need to reach for that position. They could go with a position player, trade back, whatever, and then look to address it next year. And Jimmy Garoppolo is your starter next year, or whatever it ends up being. So
it makes sense. It makes sense. I don't believe it. I think it's smoke. Here's what I think is happening. If I'm trying to read the tea leaves or go through my, as a detective, go Encyclopedia Brown on you, I would say that they want that out there to as many people as possible to diminish any trade leverage the Bears have. I think they want to make sure other teams know that the Texans have no interest in drafting quarterbacks, so no one feels the need to get into a race with the Texans to get to the first pick. What we're going to see, this is going to be really interesting because it's not like this is a good quarterback. This quarterback draft is fine. It's good. It's got its holes here and there. So it is strange that we're having, a lot of people thought the 2021 2021 quarterback draft was a more explosive draft. You had Justin Fields, you had Zach Wilson, you had Trey Lance, you had obviously Trevor Lawrence, and then Mac Jones was wherever Mac Jones was. On paper, that one's better than this one. But you're right. I think I wouldn't be surprised if 4 quarterbacks go in the top 7. I certainly think it's very possible it happens inside the top 9 picks. I think the Houston Texans may be putting it out there to try to tamp down any urges for people to start getting really aggressive from a trade standpoint because they want to be able to draft Bryce Young at 2 without having anyone try to move up. And I think what Ryan Poles' job to do is get as much smoke out there to get the interest up. So what we're hearing is, boy, the Bears actually like a lot of different players. And the Bears, the Bears already know. Ryan Poles came out yesterday. I already know I can get a first rounder in 2014, 2024, 24 and 25. Yeah. He already said, I already know I can get 2 first rounders.
Why do you say that? That's a little crazy.
Bravo for you saying that. I mean, I don't know if I'm buying it. Maybe he can. No. And maybe he knows he can get it from like a team. He might be saying that because who's telling him that? Washington Commanders. Okay, that might be true. Maybe Washington's offered that, and you've got to take the 16th pick now and drop all the way down. So Ryan might be telling the truth, but the reason he's putting it out there is he wants every team to hear it so that they will be interested. That's his job. The job of the Texans now is to try to, hey, let's keep this cool. The job of Chris Ballard is like, hey, Jim Irsay, let's stop saying things out loud, and I do think there's some smoke going on personally right now. There's jockeying.
Yeah.
This is my favorite time of the year because as a reporter, in most stories, somebody involved has an incentive to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
In the pre-draft environment, no one is incentivized at all to tell you the truth. Everyone is incentivized to lie to you.
But honestly, that's why I usually, I've learned who to trust, who not to trust. But when teams talk about other teams, that's where it gets interesting because there are some truths in there. You just have to find them. You have to really go mining for those truths because not everything will be the truth. But when teams talk about other teams, there are bits and pieces of truth in there. It can be hard to separate the fact from the fiction.
It is going to be a lot of jockeying. Because Davis Mills led a really nice touchdown drive at the end of the season. That's why there's going to be a lot of jockeying. Because if the Texans were sitting at number 1, this would be so simple. They would be picking a quarterback, whichever one they wanted, and that would be that. And then the jockeying would happen underneath. But with the Bears in their situation, I mean, Dane, what you propose in your mock where they trade down twice that is the dream scenario for them. Because that way, if Justin Fields is not the guy, if they figure out at the end of the next season that Justin Fields is not the guy long-term, they have the capital to move up and get Caleb Williams or Drake May or whoever the flavor of the month is at that point.
If I'm Ryan Poles, I'm almost going into, like right now, I'm thinking that Justin Fields is not the guy. And if he turns out to be the guy, great. But I'm positioning myself as if he's not going to be the guy. And so next year, I'm going to have multiple first rounders, multiple picks to go and rectify that. So, but yeah, in this scenario, they end up with 5 picks in the top 64 and 2 additional picks, first rounders next year. So 3 total first round picks in next year's draft. And that's exactly, there's no 2025 first rounders, but I think Ryan Poles will feel pretty comfortable with that type of haul. Plus, and I've got him going Lucas Van Ness at number 9, who, he's a Chicago kid. He's dating Cole Kmet's, younger sister. So a lot of fun connections
Do
there.
we have a Brady Quinn, AJ Hawk situation going on?
Right.
Oh,
Exactly.
boy.
Exactly. So, but I also think, you think of Ryan Poles and Ryan Poles is a long-term thinker. He's not focused on 2023. He is focused on what do we look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And a guy like Lucas Van Ness, who is an ascending player, he fits that profile for what Poles is looking for.
Well, this is going to be fascinating to watch. But let's talk about the guys we saw over the weekend who are not as sexy, who may not be winding up in anybody's first round mocks. The guys who are going to help teams who may have helped themselves over the weekend. And we've gone position by position, and everybody's made their lists. So, Dane, I'm gonna give you the floor. What position would you like to start with?
Well, let's just start at quarterback.
Okay.
I was in the stands, but Lance, I know you were on the field, so we each are coming at this from different vantage points. And I'll be interested to hear who you have to say. And I mean, the purpose of this exercise is to kind of point out the non-obvious, the guys that maybe weren't obvious winners from the combine, but guys that stood out in some type of positive way. And for me, I thought that was Jaren Hall. I really liked how he went out there and was spinning the football. He looked good on the move. What about you, Lance? What was a quarterback for you that really stood out?
I thought actually Aiden O'Connell threw the deep ball. I was kind of number one, he was getting his lower body through. Like, it looks like he's made some corrections on his delivery, because on tape he just doesn't get his lower body into the throw enough, and it really has an impact on the amount of velocity he generates for being a taller quarterback. I thought he did a better job of that, and I thought he threw deep balls really accurately. He had some post throws and some 9 routes that he threw with really good accuracy, floated it in there. I don't know that I'm going to change my grade on him necessarily, but I thought he accounted himself quite well. And then Jaren Hall, it's funny. I thought Jaren was up and down, but on tape, to me, Jaren Hall is the guy that I would say out of the group, the conglomerate of DTR and Clayton Tune and Aiden O'Connell. When I watched Jaren Hall throw on tape, I actually thought he was really poised, was really accurate, had some things from an accuracy standpoint that I really liked. He was bad at the Senior Bowl, didn't really play very, very well at Senior Bowl practices. Kind of his profile went down, but I didn't study him as much at the combine. I mean, I was watching his throws. I might have been watching wide receivers a little more, but I think Jaren Hall is going to surprise. I think he's going to be that guy in the 4th round that comes off the board. I think he's going to separate himself from Tune and Aiden O'Connell a little bit in DTR. I think that's going to be the guy after Hendon Hooker. It may be Jaren Hall, may be that next guy.
Yeah. And you think of like a team like the Giants and a team that maybe is looking for a young quarterback and what they do with the movement on that offense. Like Jaren Hall would be a great fit. He's so good on the move. That's where he's comfortable. He's an older guy,
Purdy. He's got a chance to be Brock Purdy for that offense. I mean, if I'm the Houston Texans and I take a quarterback in the 2nd round and he's there and Jaren Hall's there in the 4th round, I mean, you got you already have Davis Mills, so you really can't do that. But I could see a team that's trying, maybe the Green Bay Packers, saying, hey, he actually runs an offense that he would look good in an offense we run. Let's get him as a middle round pick, as a backup. And then if we don't love Jordan Love, we can see what we've got with him. Maybe he's got some Purdy elements.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's just about the usage. And that's what it comes down to is where would these guys fit? Like Aiden O'Connell is an accurate pocket guy. Mm-hmm. So if that's what you need in a backup, he can be your backup right now. And you can feel comfortable putting him in a game if you need to. And I think the Jaren Hall thing is very interesting, because that would be there are certain teams that he just fits really well in those. The Packers make a lot of sense. So let us move on to the guys they were throwing to. Who stood out to you guys?
So Trey Palmer ran the fastest 40 among all the receivers. So he doesn't really count, but I'm still going to say him because it was the on-field work that I was really impressed with Trey Palmer. I thought obviously the kid's fast, but catching the football, tracking the football, I thought he did a really nice job.
Yeah, I'm trying to, because I don't want to say, let me just off the top, I'll say Zay Flowers and Josh Downs killed it. I mean, absolutely killed it with their work. I thought they were outstanding. I thought the workout for Matt Landers is going to open some more people's eyes, and they're going to have to go take a look, because when you're 6'4", 200 pounds, and you're running in the 4.3s with a 1.51 split and a 37-inch vertical jump, you better go back and take a strong look at that guy, because there's not a lot of wide receivers who look like that. I would say guys who did better, let's see. Copeland. Jacob Copeland from Maryland.
Yeah.
Jacob Copeland was super smooth in his routes. And it was fun. I was watching all these wide receiver coaches were down there running the wide receivers through the routes that they were going to run and telling them how to run it. And including Keenan McCardell, who I know just a little bit, who's with Minnesota. And, he came from Maryland, as a matter of fact. He went from Maryland to, I think, maybe directly to Minnesota, or maybe he was with a different NFL
He had Stephon Diggs at Maryland.
He did.
When they recruited Diggs, he was there as a receiver.
And he gave me a great intel on him when I was one of my early years. I think it was either my first or second year at NFL.com, and he nailed Stephon Diggs. He had him nailed dead to rights. Anyway, I thought watching Copeland work around the corner, a lot of guys were falling on the hard speed outs that were intermediate, beyond 10 to 12-yard routes, and they would fly around this cone and they were slipping on the field turf. And it was the guys who were able to keep their feet beneath them and run the routes with efficient movements. Josh Downs, Smith-Njigba, and in Copeland. Jacob Copeland did a really nice job, I thought, as a pass catcher and a route runner out there from Maryland. That's one of the guys that stood out to me.
It's funny because Copeland left Florida, went to Maryland to get more playing time, more touches, and man, Anthony Richardson could have really used him last year. 100%. And that Maryland, I mean, they had talent at receiver, and so Copeland didn't get it really. I don't think he started a game. The production wasn't great, so he's a guy that has talent, always has. It's just a matter of, can he get on the field and get consistent targets.
So the one for me is not necessarily what he did in the on-field drills. It's what he did in the testing, because I already know from his tape that he's good and he's productive, and that's A.T. Perry from Wake Forest. But he had a 4.47 40, hit 11.1 broad, 35-inch vertical. So showing some more athletic traits where he didn't necessarily come off as super explosive and athletic on tape, but he was extremely productive on tape. So if he's got these traits and he produces in the offense he played in, that makes me a little more apt to want to take him.
I think the big number with A.T. Perry is 198, and that for a guy that's 6'3" and a half, just that lean body structure, how skinny he is. That's the biggest worry that teams have, is the lack of play strength. But I do think that 4.47 number did help him, because that was another concern that I know teams had, is just, what's his long speed? Could he consistently win vertically? And 4.47, not an amazing number, but I think it's a solid number for him.
So, all right, we've gone quarterback, receiver. Do we want to go to the offensive line now?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I always want to go to the offensive line.
I want to hear Lance wax poetic.
This is all you, Lance. The stage is yours.
Well, first of all, let me put on the record that I think Dane does a really good job with offensive linemen. You can always tell who kind of knows the position and who's just kind of riding along with the rest of the crew. And Dane knows his offensive line, so never think that Dane doesn't know what he's talking about, because he absolutely does. I think Matthew Bergeron really helped himself, and he's not a guy he's kind of off the radar a little bit from a general sense, but he's always been teetering on the brink of the first round, I think. I'm not 100% sold on him being a tackle. I think his hand issues, his hand placement, his punch, I think that's going to take a while to correct. But he is a guy who's 6'5" and a quarter. He actually measured taller than I thought he was going to be. He was 318, and his reach was 33 and 3/4 arm length, which is, pretty solid. I think he's going to be a fail at tackle, move to guard type of guy. But I think
Zone scheme,
I think he may have pushed himself into the first round. So he definitely helped himself. He's not way off the beaten path. But Blake Freeland had a workout also. He came in at 302 pounds. He was heavier than that at the Senior Bowl. He got down so he could run faster. Guess what? He ran a 4.9640 with a 1.68 split, which was terrific. He had a 37-inch vertical leap and a broad jump of 10 feet. Blake Freeland, I've seen a picture. I talked to his dad. He showed me a picture when Blake Freeland's carrying 325 pounds during COVID, where he really just got into working out hardcore. He was like the mountain on Game of Thrones. I mean, he looked incredible, but he said he feels too slow at that weight. I think Blake Freeland's a guy who can weigh 318, 320, which is important when you're 6'7" plus. So I think he can carry plenty of weight. I don't think that's going to be a problem, but he's a very athletic mover. He tested well, and being over 300 pounds at combine and being even heavier than that at Senior Bowl, I think he's a tackle. I mean, I think he helped himself.
Needs to be on a wide zone scheme. Let the man reach. He's good at it. He's built for it. I mean, that's what he had at BYU, and these traits are perfect for that. For that piece of it. Now, pass pro is its own thing, but he looks like if you could build a tackle for a wide zone offense, that's what you build.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like Braden Daniels, Utah. I thought he was moving pretty good, and for a guy that has that position flex, you talk to people at Utah, they rave about him and the positional versatility that he offers. Tackle, guard, they even can play center possibly. So Braden Daniels is one of those guys that stood out. John Gaines from UCLA, the way he was moving.
Good workout.
On the interior, can play guard, can play center. The UCLA coaches speak really highly of the character, the way he carries himself, the way he works. So and then the testing numbers and his positional workout, I thought were both outstanding.
So let's go to the tight ends. Obviously, Darnell Washington sucked the oxygen out of the tight end conversation by just being Darnell Washington and everything. We've talked about what Darnell Washington can be. But again, this is a really deep class. Some of these guys looked really good. Will Mallory ran really fast. And I mean, he's a move tight end. You kind of expected that. But I really liked Sam Laporta. I thought he showed some athleticism, and let's face it, Iowa's offense stinks. So there's a chance he could be a lot better in the NFL than he was in college.
Yeah, and it's when you talk to scouts about him, they don't bring up Hawkinson or Noah Fant. They bring up George Kittle when you talk about Sam Laporta, and that ties into the toughness and just the way that he goes about his business. I want to mention Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion, who had
a workout.
Unreal numbers. I mean, just across the board, fantastic numbers. But his positional work, I thought, was really good. I mean, Lance, would you see him catching the football?
I didn't pay much attention to him. I was watching the other guys. I didn't pay as much attention to Kuntz because I just feel like he's a workout warrior, to be honest with you. I think his workouts they're mind-boggling. What Kuntz did, and I'm pulling them up right now, they're ridiculous. I mean, he ran a 4.55 at 6'7" 3/8", 255. You basically, the stride length that requires or get your strides up to par in 40 yards is impressive. But he had a 40-inch vertical jump. He had a 10'8" broad jump. I mean, those are just crazy, crazy numbers.
That's quarterback numbers.
Yeah, they really are. And so the guy that kind of caught my attention a little bit was Will Mallory. And Will Mallory, I know he's not going to be a great blocker. He has kind of average size at 239 pounds. But I think Will Mallory is making me kind of go back and take a little bit more of a look at Will Mallory. Let me put it that way. I want to make sure that I have him right. I know I have Brenton Strange right. I think Brenton Strange may have opened some people's eyes. Nothing crazy with his 40 time. He was a 4.7, but the explosive stuff was pretty good. I think in space, what's interesting to me is he plays fast. So I'm curious if you had any thoughts on him, because in talking to teams, he's not a secret. I thought he was kind of my secret, but the team's all just like, yeah, Brenton Strange is a good player. I don't know where you see him or how you rank him or what your thoughts are on him yet, Dane, but I think Brenton Strange is going to be a guy that maybe goes higher than people expect from Penn State.
Yeah, my initial grade on him was a 4th, and now that I kind of go back and what grade you have on?
I have a starting grade, but my draft projection where I think he'll go is I think he's going to go in the 4th. I've got 3rd, 4th. So I think you're right. I think that's where he goes. My grade on him is I project him to be a future starter.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because there's so many tight ends in this group that, like when I did my top 100, I wanted to get, Luke Schoonmaker in there. I wanted to get, there's tight ends that you want in the top 100, and then you just run out of spots, and a guy like Brenton Strange or Davis Allen or some other guys that you think they have a real chance to be players in this league. Just they didn't fit in the top 100, but you can foresee a path where they become a guy. And with Strange, he fits that profile. It's not just the movement. It's he'll catch the football, take a hit. Like there's a toughness factor to him. I special teams, what he gives you on offense as a versatile piece that can line up back in the backfield, can line up in the slot, can do different things for you. So Strange, he's a good player. I think you're right. Doesn't get nearly enough attention.
The running backs, we've talked about this could be a potentially deep class that you could find value in the lower rounds. The one, again, not necessarily what he did on the field, I already know his tape's good, that stood out was Devon Achane, who we knew was fast, but he's fast. 4.32. I realize there are going to be concerns about his size and running between the tackles, but again, go back and watch him play at Texas A&M, and then he's that fast, and he can return kicks. I feel like that's a lot of value there. But who, Lance, who on the field really stood out to you in the running back group?
God, it's so tricky sometimes for running back. I thought Tyjae Spears would be one. I'm pulling up my running backs right now.
How about Bijan? How good? I mean, how good is that guy? My goodness,
he's really good. He's had 2 ACL tears in the same knee, so some teams are going to be afraid of him. I think we're
talking about Spears. Sorry. I mentioned Bijan. I just want to make sure people know we're not talking about Bijan. We're talking about Spears.
No, we're talking about Tyjae Spears. Is the guy. I thought another guy who stood out was. I wish we would have seen McBride because he's a guy I like a lot. Deneric Prince, actually.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
Prince is one of those guys where I had already my grade's not great on him. And I said, I'm just going to go look. I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure what I'm seeing is what I'm seeing. Deuce Vaughn, holy moly. Deuce Vaughn is made for an event like that. I mean, Deuce Vaughn is actually a really great football player. He just happens to be 5'5" and 179 pounds, 27-inch arms. I mean, he's one of the smallest. Historically, you can't find running backs that size. They don't exist. They don't exist. You can tell me about Jacquizz Rodgers all you want. Quiz is like close to 200 pounds. Big, thick lower body.
Sproles is built differently.
Yeah, they're built. You can't find guys Deuce's size, and yet Deuce is a competitor. He's tough. He can work out of the backfield. He's got wiggle. He's got speed. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with them. I put a 6-round grade on him because I think somebody's going to take him, but historically teams are just not going to be okay with his size. And yet when you watch him work out and you see the foot quickness and all you can think of is there any way, like, how could we use him? What could we do with a guy like this? Can we run him out at wide receiver some, or how do we use him? You're trying to figure out a way to get a good football player on the field. And that's why his combine workout to me was so important, because maybe it makes you think even harder about getting outside the box with a good football player who lacks size, but doesn't lack toughness. He had plenty of carries. Go look at his touches. Show me all his injuries with his touches.
Well, and so I came up with this theory based on Tyler Lockett, actually, when he played at K-State. But if you have an offense where there's one main weapon and everybody knows you're going to force feed that weapon, and he still puts up numbers, you draft that person. And that is Deuce Vaughn.
It's not a bad thought.
No, that was Drake London last year. I mean, everybody knew he was getting the football. I mean, he had like 15 targets every single game, and you still couldn't stop him. So, he didn't run a 40-yard dash last year, still went top 10 first receiver off the board. So, no, I think, that makes total sense.
All right, let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. We talked about Jalen Carter earlier, so we'll go interior D-line to start with. I'm curious, Lance, what did you think of Zach Pickens?
Oh, love him.
That's the name I wrote down too.
Yeah. Zach Pickens was. I actually liked him on tape. It's just he wasn't consistent enough. I had more of a low end starter, high end rotational backup thing. And then after I watched him work out and I talked to one of his coaches, I feel a little better about him. I ended up, my new grades that will be coming out after the combine, where I make some shifts based on size, lengths, and things, because we don't get a lot of these numbers on underclassmen. You're not going to have him. He's a guy with super long arms too, by the way, at 34 3/8 for being 6'3". I thought Zach Pickens really helped himself. Very athletic, looked great. The tape, you can find enough on tape to where you say, yeah, you know what? I had enough on tape to like him already. And then after the combine, I like him even more. So I think Zach Pickens may have shot himself up into the second round. He's for sure on day 2, but I think he may have gotten himself into the second round. No worse than the early third. And that's a good name. That's a good pull, Andy, because he absolutely helped himself. And he's somebody off the grid a little bit right now that people need to be talking about along the interior.
Watching him work out, it was kind of like a reminder that, oh yeah, this is why this guy was a 5-star. That's why this guy was, everybody wanted him out of high school. And you didn't always see it during the games, but the talent is there. Lance, I want to get your opinion on Kalijah Kancey, who, everyone's talking about the 40-yard dash, the 10-yard split with him. Came in at 6'1". It's great. He grew. People thought he'd be 6 foot or smaller. But 30 5/8 arms, that's the number that is kind of my takeaway with Kalijah Kancey's combine. That's tough. I mean, I still think Kancey's going to go in the first round because the tape is that good, the quickness, the play violence. But 30 5/8 inch arms is really tough to overlook and play with when you're at a disadvantage against. It doesn't matter which blocker you're going up against. You're at an immediate length disadvantage, whoever you're facing.
Yeah, so I had to go pull this up because I wanted to check. So Ed Oliver came in at 6'2". I think he may have been 6'1" and some change. Although I've stood next to him, I don't know that I think he's 6'2", but I have to go see what the exact combine results were. 287 pounds, and he was 31 3/4 arms. It may sound like a small thing to people, but that extra inch on the arms is a big deal to teams. The fact that, and 31 3/4 arms, Ed Oliver has short arms. However, it's longer than Kalijah Kancey. So if you care about 285 pounds, then you're really going to care about 30 5/8 inch arms.
Well,
the combination of the
let's
two.
add another person, because this is the person who keeps getting brought up since they went to the same college.
You go ahead.
Aaron Donald, 6'1", 285 at the combine, 32 5/8 inch arms.
Yeah, I mean, the arm length is substantially different that Dane brought up and you brought up. But I think what we have here is, so Aaron Donald, who was as dominant as maybe any player I've ever seen at a Senior Bowl. Aaron Donald, despite his size, ended up going, 12, I think, in the draft.
Yep.
And then because of his success, Ed Oliver, who was not as good as Aaron Donald, but had flashes, Ed Oliver was drafted, I think it was 9th by the Buffalo Bills because the Aaron Donald effect. Now, ironically, Ed Oliver hasn't been as productive in pro football. So now I think Kalijah Kancey's hurt by that. I still think he's going in the first. So does Dane, because you'll find that in his mock draft. But I just think Kalijah Kancey, as long as you know who he is, which is a devastating potential pass rusher and game wrecker, if I'm a team, I say, look, we're going to have a big old boy playing first down. They're going to be, eating up the blockers. And when we get teams in 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 8, here comes Cansey. And we're bringing him on, and he's going to shoot into gaps. And if you're going to run, he's going to bust up your run scheme. If you catch him perfectly, you're going to cave him out of the hole, and it's not going to be a problem for you. And if you're passing, he is going to get by your guards, and you're going to have some real problems in the pocket. He's a really, to your point, Andy, he is a really talented football player. He's along the interior. Everybody knows he's the guy. They try to block him. They can't. He's still productive. He still creates pressure. And I know he's going to take losses because of his size, but the wins he can generate with his quickness for a team like the Cincinnati Bengals, for example, or somebody who's looking for interior rush, he is going to be the guy that they really love. You just have to know that he may not be playing on a lot of first downs.
And the Bengals had Geno Atkins for a long time, and they understand.
Right. Well, and I had
a powerhouse, yeah.
I had him going to the Lions at 18 overall in my mock draft. Who's the general manager of the Lions? Brad Holmes, who is really responsible for the Rams drafting Aaron Donald. Brad Holmes got up on the table and said, "We need to draft this guy." So size be damned. Let's get a good player.
Put 2 and 2 together. I like that inside knowledge.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and the Lions, they really want that interior disruption on the defensive line. You got Aiden Hutchinson last year. You got the juice off the edge. Now let's bring it on the interior. So I do like that fit in Detroit.
Just for the record, my mock draft, I had Jalen Carter 6 to the Lions. So
there you go.
I ended up going Bijan. I gave them Bijan because I already had a defensive tackle for him.
So let's move out to the edge. Who really stood out? Lance, who stood out on the field for you?
Well, Nolan Smith. So I'm not as high on Nolan Smith as some other people are. And I still have questions about if all of those athletic gifts translate into the rush. I think he's a really tough run defender. I still have, I still question whether or not his best opportunity may be as a stack linebacker who can, from time to time, you can flip between even front and odd front and really have him off the ball or on the line. He has that kind of power. He has that kind of speed. But so
and
I think
he's
really,
smart enough to handle that too.
Without question.
Varying roles.
Absolutely smart enough to help himself. And I think another guy that helped himself was DJ Johnson from Oregon. Now, DJ Johnson has some of the best power. His bench press numbers are 38 on tape. He has 48 reps, basically. He's one of the most explosive. He has some of the most explosive heavy hands that you're going to find. He's 6'4", 260 pounds. They list him at edge. I told his agent, I said, look, honestly, based on when you see the way he's built, I feel like he could end up at 289, 290 pounds and become a 3 technique like Henry Melton did when he went from being a defensive end to a defensive tackle. But when you see the way this guy moves and you see how strong he is, you see the flashes on tape. But I think you could really get a feel for, all right, this is kind of a diverse player when you saw him on the field because he is built like a much bigger, thicker guy at 260 pounds. There's no question he can carry a lot more than 260, in my opinion.
A guy that I really was impressed with was Yaya Diaby, the Louisville defensive lineman. I thought he had an okay week at the Senior Bowl. He didn't blow me away. I remember watching Louisville tape and thinking like, okay, Yasir Abdullah is the guy that I really like in this front seven. But then Diaby at the combine, man, for a guy that's 263 pounds to go and have, I think he had the second best 10-yard split among all the edge rushers at that size. So it wasn't far off from Nolan Smith. And he's also, 25 pounds bigger than Nolan Smith is. So there's something there with Diaby. It's just you have to really, if you're looking for a developmental edge rusher in those mid rounds, Diaby has that explosion. He has an NFL body to work with. He's long. He has almost 34-inch arms. So he's a guy that I'd be really trying to target there in the middle rounds.
Yeah, I love Diaby. I thought Diaby on tape was really a tough player. I think his combine was fantastic. And a guy that I thought looked really good in drills, looked very fluid, was Robert Beal Jr. Man, he was floating out there. He ran a 4.48. He was really smooth out in space, measured in at close to 6'4", 247. His arms are over 34 and a half inches. I thought the way Beal moved around the field kind of reminded you that this was, you got to remember now, this was a guy who was the leading sack man just 2 years ago for his team. So you have to keep an eye on Robert Beal as well. I think he's somebody who could be one of those middle to late middle round guys who teams bet on because of the trades.
Well, and let's remember, his team is Georgia.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Look at who he's
There's
playing
a lot
with
of talent over there.
and leading them in sacks. I do want to stay in the SEC, move back a level and go to linebacker, because I thought Owen Pappo's testing numbers were really interesting. And it makes you wonder, was he used properly at Auburn? Like you get a lot of questions like that when you see a guy running a 4.39 at 225 pounds.
I mean,
I just don't think he sees it very well. I knew he was a good athlete. This doesn't really change anything for me. I'll bump him a little bit because I think, he's going to be a lock to be a special teams player. So I want to make sure I have the proper grade on him. But to me, all the testing in the world, he just doesn't see and diagnose the plays quickly. None of that's going to change with grade testing. You got to be able to see it. He shouldn't play in the middle. I mean, to me, this is the other thing I wrote is he needs to be a will, or you can put him at
let him run
wherever you want to put him, but let him run and hit. Don't make him diagnosed and try to get the fits perfect, because that's not who he is.
Yeah. So who'd you guys like in this group?
Who did I like? I did like Abdullah, the Louisville linebacker. I thought he looked good. Who else do I've written down here? I mean, Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell had a good workout.
He did.
Better than I thought what it shows on the tape. I like Jack Campbell. I didn't love him, but man, some of these numbers, the way he was moving out there, he looked really, really good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm trying to go through a list because I didn't think anyone, I've been big on Deion Henley I think Deion Henley looked really good. That's the guy. I mean, when I was watching him do the W drill, you watch his change of direction. He's so compact when he moves. He has such efficient movement, and he's not the biggest guy at 225 pounds, but I think fans would be horrified if they knew how small linebackers get during the season. These guys lose weight and they get way lighter.
Well, and
linebackers get way lighter during the year than you think.
They've gotten so much smaller over the past 15 years anyway. I mean, it's funny because people think of Dante Hightower, who was already bigger. He was big for that era anyway. But I mean, that was like a Coke machine playing linebacker. The guys who play linebacker now would have been called safeties 15 years ago.
Yeah, Lance, for you, who's the third linebacker in this draft behind Drew Sanders and Trenton Simpson? Is it Campbell or is it Henley?
Let me check real quick. I got to see who I have and where. I've got to make some. So it's Henley. It's Henley it's Henley and Campbell right next to each other. Henley is maybe going to pass Trenton Simpson for me. I'll probably keep him below, but you have to remember this too, Dane. Trenton Simpson is carrying a 62 grade for me. He's somebody who has all the physical traits, but I don't like the way he sees the football either. So me personally, I have a grade that would be more like a second, third on him. So Agreed. I'm not as high. And Henley, I think I actually trust him as a linebacker a little bit more. So my grade for Campbell, Henley, and Simpson are going to be when I make the move ups, they're going to be very, very very similar. I do think it's not a great year for linebackers. I think 200. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Henry Toto.
Yeah, I think he's fine. I think he's solid, but this is not a great year for linebackers. If you need linebackers, it's kind of hard to find. How do you stack them? See, I think we're the same on Jack Campbell. I see the testing numbers, but I don't see him move with that swiftness and suddenness on tape.
No, and he's not a bad athlete on tape by any means. No. He's just not the supremely gifted athlete we saw at the combine. So, yeah, I mean, I like Jack Campbell. I think my initial grade was an early third, and then I bumped him up a little bit. And so he's one of those guys that I think will probably be drafted maybe a little bit earlier than I have him graded. But I mean, he put himself probably close to the top 50, top 60 conversation now with how he did at the combine. So it's he helped himself, no question.
So let's move into the second level, and the safeties there's one guy and his testing numbers were not all that impressive, but I love Jamie Robinson at Florida State. So Lance, I'm curious what you saw from him on the field.
I thought he looked good in the field, and yeah, the testing numbers were a little bit disappointing to me too, because I think he's a really good. I just think he's a really good football player. I think he's highly competitive with a nose for the football, and I thought he moved around the field pretty well. I think unfortunately he plays a position on the back end where they do pay very close attention. And look, his official numbers were 4.59. Which is, it's okay. Usually it'd be okay. That 4.6 mark is what they want you below. But now that the combine turf is so much faster, I think that's going to be a concern for teams is if they make any adjustments, if they adjust him to a 4.63, a 4.62, and then you look at his arm length isn't even 30 inches. He's 5'10" at safety. He is really more of a nickel, I guess. You've got short arms. You didn't run super fast. Your vertical jump was okay at 33.5. Usually starters at that position are looking at more like a vertical of about 35. He's going to fall below the mark on some important testing numbers for teams. But when I watched him move, I thought he moved great. And I think he's, a really competitive player who, to me, plays better than some of the testing might indicate. But this is one of those things. Once you start having a few exceptions, okay, he's below the standard for vertical for a starter. He's below the standard for 40-yard dash for a starter. He's below the size standard. He's below the arm length standard. He's below the weight at 191. All right, well, now he's a nickel. Okay, well, we got a 4.59 nickel, so we're going to have to play zone. Now, all of a sudden, you start really – I'm just telling you how it's going to end up playing. We can talk about how much we like him all we want, Andy, but what's going to happen is that funnel is going to get smaller and smaller for teams that are going to consider him, and that means he's probably going to drop in the draft a little bit.
Yeah, it's always tough because you play the percentages, but you also trust the tape, and some of these guys are hard conversations. He's one of them. One of my favorite nickels in this class, I thought had a great workout. Quan Martin from Illinois. Really, both those Illinois safeties look good with Sidney Brown. And throw Chase Brown in there too. I thought all three of those guys looked really, really good, really athletic. They moved really well. So it was, and they're the highest drafted Illinois player, Devin Witherspoon, didn't even get a chance to work out. So Illinois represented themselves pretty well.
Yeah, I love somebody said that Sidney Brown looked like a muscled up running back, and it was like, yes, his twin brother is indeed a running back.
Yeah.
Funny you say that. Yeah.
Funny you say that because, I think Quan Brown really helped himself. But I want to ask, we're focusing on guys who look good out there. Brandon Hill, to me, from Pitt.
Speed.
I know my issues with him are how he tackles. He takes bad angles to the football, tries to land knockout blows all the time. I think he needs to, just calm down and play consistent football. But Sidney Brown along the draft process has helped himself in my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
I think Quan Martin has helped himself in my eyes. I think the guy that I have to go back and reassess now is going to be Jair Brown. And I'm not gonna kill Jair Brown because I think he's a really excellent football player, and I think he runs well on tape. However, he ran a 4.65. And his vertical jump, now, if he jumped 39, 38 inches, I could say, okay. He had a 32.5 vertical, which is low for a safety. He had a 9.11 broad jump, which was, disappointing for a safety. Yeah. He ran a 4.65, which is disappointing for a safety. And this is a guy that I absolutely love on tape, but there's concern because on tape, I feel like he's more explosive, but these numbers don't show any explosiveness at all. So I don't know what you're going to do with that, Dane, because I think he's a really good football player.
Yeah, he is.
But I can't just ignore them. I just can't.
No, you can't. Well, to be completely honest with you, I wrote down a 4.65 in my notes. I thought the long speed that's right around where he was. Now, I thought the explosion numbers, the jumps would be a little bit better than that. He was, I think, number 68 on my top 100. I had an early third round grade on him, and so I don't think I'm going to necessarily move him much at all. I mean, it's not a great safety group in the top 100 picks. Brian Branch didn't have a great 40. But he's got great tape. Ideally you want better than a 4.58 at the nickel position than what he gave you. But you're gonna trust what Brian Branch and his strengths and his cover ability and his intelligence. And I was told he just was outstanding in the interviews. So I don't think that's gonna kill Brian Branch all that much. But it's just a rough group for safeties early.
Let's go to corners because there is a little more, it feels like more meat on the bone with the corners. Who stood out to you guys?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, now I have a first round grade on this guy. So DJ Turner, I'm sure he woke some people up with that speed, although he was expected to run fast and he ran.
You called it in our combine preview.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. DJ Turner had blazing speed, but I think it's how he can mirror and match. Like, I feel like he mirror and matches like Tre'Davious White did coming out. I'll never forget watching Tre'Davious White and saying, why aren't more people talking about this guy? This guy has beautiful footwork. And I feel the same way about DJ Turner. He has similar footwork. He plays like he's a bigger cornerback. I want to see him make a few more plays on the ball, obviously. But I think DJ Turner helped himself. And, at the combine, and then once, not only the combine, but I think the workouts, he was pretty good too. And we're trying to go off the beaten path. We know Christian Gonzalez did also, but Terrell Smith, man, I liked his tape a lot. I'd heard about him at the East West. I didn't go to the East West. He ran a 4.41. He had a 1.50 10-yard split, which is a blazing 10-yard split for a guy 204 pounds. He's got terrific size. And I just think he's got good footwork and cover ability. I think Terrell Smith is a player all along this process has really helped himself out. And I think this is a guy to watch for who really just cemented that, for me at least, Dane, here at the Combine, from the cornerback from Minnesota.
Yeah, there's some top 100 grades out there around the league. There's some love. And I thought, you watch him on tape, I thought he did an admirable job against like Charlie Jones, Purdue. But there's he loves to make contact. He'll be called for holding. I think his eye discipline's a little inconsistent. You want to see him better track the football, make plays. But when you're that size, you have that speed, you have that suddenness. Teams are going to take chances on you all day. The Maryland corners were outstanding. That Maryland in general. We already talked about Jacob Copeland, and a lot of Maryland players tested really well. Lance and Andy, I want to get your both of your guys' opinions on Emmanuel Forbes, who I love the tape, love the ball production. 6'1", great. 32.25-inch arms, good enough. 4.35 in the 40, yeah. 1.48 in the 10, love it. 166 pounds. What
Devontae Smith is a person who exists.
You can't guard Devontae Smith every game.
Devontae Smith doesn't have to tackle. Emmanuel Forbes needs to tackle.
Devontae Smith has to get tackled. So listen, I get it. He's small, he's skinny, but sometimes dudes are skinny.
Okay, hold on. We're going to put you to the test. Ready?
Okay.
So we're in the draft room.
Yep.
And you're on the table for him. And here's all right. Well, who do you compare him to? Who do you think that's in the league right now? Who do you think
there's nobody I can compare him to, but there really wasn't anybody I could compare Devontae to. And I realize Devontae Smith is a receiver, different position, but it's the same type of body. It's the same body type where you're like, this is a wiry person, but it seemed like it didn't affect him in college. He played against top receivers.
His calves look like Twizzlers, Staples. Do you want to have do you want us to send you out to North Dakota? You want us to give you Duluth and North Dakota State?
Yeah, and when he has 3 pick sixes as a rookie, You're going to be glad he's on our team.
I love the
Lance.
ball production. What are we going to do with him as soon as he snaps his ankle? What are we going to do?
He ain't going to snap his ankle. He's already proven durability.
Proven durability, how long? He's 166. Show me the next time we have a meeting, show me the guy, bring in your comps. I want to see 3 comps on him and why you think he'll be able to tackle when
Sometimes
teams.
you got to use your imagination, Lance.
That's exactly what That's exactly what
really
GM wants to hear.
You have
no
no
argument
argument like this, right?
Yeah.
FCS, Texas high school football in general. Then you get Power 5 football, or then it goes Group of 5, then Power 5, and NFL's the last to be imaginative. They don't like using.
Oh, I know, but the problem, and this is what you're pointing out with this exercise. You can't find a comparison.
No,
it's
not
very
not
difficult.
6'1", not 6'1",
Yeah.
not a guy. I would
keep going back. That's why I keep going back to Devontae Smith, because physically he's the only person similar that I can think of.
Yeah, but you can't find a comp either to like there was none for Bryce Young, and we weren't.
Right.
You know, you also can't find guys with that many pick sixes for touchdowns. Like ultimately, I'm talking to an executive at one point during the combine, and I'm thinking he's going to kill. I think he's going to kill Forbes, and he's like, "No, Forbes will be fine." I said, "Yeah, but he was 166 pounds. Like, did you see his ball production?" Now, I didn't think he moved great. I think he's a little bumpy. It's hard to be smooth when you're 6'1", 166, and you have those long legs. But his ball production, like, it just comes down to, if you're going to make an exception for size, you better have something really strong you're going to make that exception for. And he does.
Yeah.
He has ball production that is unlike anybody else. So to your point, Andy, you make exceptions if there's something exceptional that you can counterbalance, and he has that.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Kancey and his shorter arms. Same thing with Bryce Young and his slight frame. I mean, this is just a draft that has a few of these outliers that are really, really intriguing.
And some of them are going to wind up being great, and some executives going to look like a genius, and some of them are going to bust, and they're going to be like, "See, we told you." But that's just how it goes, gentlemen. It has been a pleasure. We shall reconvene, and we got a lot of chewing on these guys as pro day season gets into high gear in the next few weeks.
They start tomorrow. I mean, scouts are already on the road for pro days. It's crazy.
Why waste time? Time? You had a good workout at the combine. Let's go knock it out pro day. Then you can just chill. We're going to just chill for a while. We'll talk to you later.